Hey everyone, and welcome. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining us for today's explainer because we're looking at a truly fascinating story. We're going to break down a very short but incredibly profound piece of source material that perfectly illustrates the powerful and honestly often misunderstood intersection of hard work and faith. It's all about a struggling farmer living in a small village. Now, whether you're approaching this from a spiritual perspective or you're just interested in the psychology of resilience, the lessons we can pull from this farmer's experience, they're totally applicable to all of our lives. We're going to map out exactly how human effort interacts with surrender. So let's jump right in. All right, let's set the stage and look at the desperate stakes this man was dealing with. We've got a hardworking farmer, failing crops, and a family with absolutely no food. The source text paints a really stark picture here. Soon he had no money left, and he honestly didn't know how he would feed his family. I really want you to imagine carrying that weight for a second. We aren't just talking about having a bad day at work. We're talking about a literal existential threat to his family's survival. He's staring down the barrel of complete ruin. And the craziest part, despite his absolute best efforts, the situation is completely outside of his control.
Okay, so let's look at this contrast, because this is where the true friction of the story really lies. On one hand, every single day he worked incredibly hard. But on the other, his crops just kept failing. We're often taught, right, that if we just put in the physical input, if we do the relentless hard work, we're automatically going to get the output we want. But this farmer, he's experiencing a devastating lack of output. He's literally pouring his sweat and energy into the dirt day after day, and the earth is giving him absolutely nothing in return. It's this perfect storm of immense effort meeting a totally immovable, failing reality.
And that immense friction naturally brings us to an emotional breaking point. One night, feeling utterly hopeless, he knelt down and prayed, "Jesus, I have done everything I can. Please help me." I really want to emphasize that first half of the sentence for a second. I have done everything I can. This isn't some plea born out of laziness or a guy looking for an easy shortcut. No way. This is a desperate, singular cry for help that only happens after human capacity has been totally exhausted. He has reached the absolute end of his own abilities, his resources, his own strength. There's literally nothing left in his toolkit. But here is where the narrative takes a really fascinating turn. The very next morning, what happens? He woke up with renewed strength. But notice what didn't happen right away. The immediate result of his desperate prayer wasn't some sudden, miraculous change in the weather, right? He didn't wake up to a flooded field or bags of cash on his doorstep. The immediate shift was entirely internal. He was given renewed strength, and the text notes that instead of giving up, he went out and worked harder than ever. The environment hadn't changed one bit yet, but the man operating inside that environment, he had been completely transformed overnight. Now let's trace exactly how this unfolded, just to really grasp the mechanics of what's happening here. First, we have the initial context, months of severe drought. Then comes that crucial morning of renewed internal strength that we just talked about. Well, it's only after that internal shift, a few days later, that the external environment actually changes, and unexpected rain finally comes to the village. And then, weeks later, his crops begin to grow, and his field becomes the healthiest in the entire area. It's such a clear sequence. The internal provision of strength absolutely preceded the external provision of rain. So naturally, when you end up with the healthiest field in the area after a severe, prolonged drought, people are going to notice. The villagers come up to him and ask this simple, very human question: how did you do it? And this is a really great turning point in our explainer today. This question shifts us from the physical story of agriculture and weather directly into the core spiritual and psychological lesson that the farmer actually learned. See, the villagers, they're looking for a farming technique, but the farmer is about to hand them a major life principle. And here is his response. The farmer smiled and said, "When I had no strength left, I gave my worries to Jesus." Okay, the crucial thing here is understanding exactly when this surrender happened. He didn't casually hand over his worries while he still had a backup plan in his back pocket. Not at all. The act of surrendering his anxieties happened exactly when his own human strength ran out. He decoupled his peace of mind from the success of his crops. He completely let go of the burden of the outcome, which actually freed him up to simply focus on the daily work with that renewed energy we saw earlier. And this brilliantly illustrates the profound realization the farmer came to. He realized that the true miracle wasn't just external. As he put it, he didn't just change my field, he changed my heart. The farmer recognizes that the true miracle wasn't just the agricultural success of the unexpected rain. I mean, the rain was great for sure, but the deeper, more lasting miracle was the internal spiritual transformation. His heart went from hopelessness and despair to strength and resolve even before a single drop of rain fell from the sky.
So what does this all mean for us? This builds right into the primary takeaway of today's explainer. God may not always change your situation immediately, that He can give you the strength to overcome it. This really distills the entire source material down to its most practical application. When you are facing a drought, whether that's financial, emotional, or professional, the immediate provision you receive might not be the quick removal of the problem. Often, the real provision is the internal fortitude, the grit, and the peace of mind required to endure that struggle and eventually overcome it through persistent, faithful effort. This entire narrative is perfectly anchored by a powerful piece of scripture from the source text. With God, all things are possible, Matthew 19:26. It's a beautiful reminder that possibilities often open up not when we try to force them with our own limited power, but when we reach the end of ourselves and lean on a higher strength. So I want to leave you with a question to think about today. When you hit a wall and your own efforts are yielding absolutely no results, where do you draw your strength to keep going during your own personal droughts? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope this provided some clear, encouraging perspective for your day. Catch you next time.